The Rebel Capitalist Show.
I wanted to start off with masks. What would be the difference between just those blue masks that everyone wears that just are kind of disposable and the stuff that you get like that N95 mask? If I'm not mistaken, that's the best. And then with those little blue masks, are they completely worthless after an hour and you breathe in them? I've heard that that they don't really function properly if you touch them a lot or if you breathe in them for more than like an hour or two. They're pretty much meant for like a nurse to go into a room for like 30 seconds and then take it right off and throw it in the trash.
Yeah. So the blue masks come in all sorts of different qualities, right? There's really cheap ones that are single layer. And then there's really actually fairly elegant ones that are 3 layers. And they actually have a little wire thing that would help create a tighter seal. So a perfect mask is one that seals all the way around your breathing holes and doesn't allow things to come in through the side and has, N100 or better sort of filtration. Who's going to wear those, right? Very hard to breathe in those. Maybe if you were sitting passively somewhere, it could work, but you want those. And by the way, not the ones with the valve on them, which allows you to breathe out easily, because then you're just spewing your viruses if you're using it to both prevent yourself from getting sick and to stop yourself from spreading it. So that would be the best. Sealed N95, no valve. So a lot of people use the ones they hook behind the ears like this, but you notice a lot of those have a lot of ways for things to get in around the side. Better than nothing, right? Especially in the transmission, because if you do cough or talk or sneeze, I don't know if you've seen these, George, but they have these videos where they put lasers on the side, and as people talk, just like I'm talking now, you'd be disgusted to see what's coming out of people's mouths, right? So that's the whole point of those blue masks, is mostly to stop the people who are spreading it a little bit more than to stop the people from it coming in. But both ways, notice what happens. Fewer come out, fewer come in. We've lowered the viral inoculum. You have a lower starting point. That's the whole point of this.
Okay. So that was my next question. If masks are really more to prevent you from getting it or spreading it, sounds like it's a little bit of both. So my next question would be, how is this spread and how is it not spread? I mean, you see people that are, you walk within 40 feet of them and they're just like running away from you as though you're somehow just your aura is going to spread it. But if I'm not mistaken, you actually have to speak. Something has to come out of your mouth, like droplets or something like that. You're not going to get it just by looking at someone or through their BO or something like that. Is that a correct way to look at it?
That is a correct way to look at it. I don't have great data on this yet, but I can tell you from everything I've studied and the fact that we don't have great data on this is kind of data itself. And so it's this, which is that we don't have any data that says outdoor events are associated with big super spreader events. We don't, it's like, the whole Black Lives Matter protest, thousands of people, you saw them, they were wearing masks, but they were hanging off and a lot of people didn't have them. But we don't have a huge surge in cases after that, right? This thing spreads best inside closed contact in a room. And I think the best way we could imagine that is, imagine that you took a dropper with some really like food dye, right? We've all done this in the kitchen as kids, right? You put the drop in and it spreads kind of complex, right? All through that glass, but that glass gets full. If you drop that into a moving river, you're not even going to notice it. Where'd it go, right? So it's the same concept, which is that it really spreads best in a closed environment, particularly if you don't have any good airflow flushing stuff out. That's it. We also know that it spreads really good when people are singing in a church. Something about singing, we're in close proximity. People are taking big gulps of air to sing that next thing out. We have tons of super spreader events when people are singing indoors in a closed environment. Didn't have to be a church. Didn't mean to pick on that, but we have a lot of data around that. So here's the summary: is this thing spreads, but it doesn't spread super easily. You kind of have to be in proximity without a lot of airflow. And it helps if people are either coughing or singing or yelling or in some way expressing like that. But outdoors, I don't worry about it at all, to be honest. Maybe I should, but I don't.
And so then, of course, I'm thinking, then why do we lock people in their houses?
Yes,
that's kind of counterproductive there, huh?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really, a lot of the things that are being done from a decision standpoint at the, I don't call them health authorities, I call them managers now, because an authority would actually, use the best possible data. And by the way, there are countries that are doing a great job at this. The United States is doing a pretty, I wouldn't say singularly bad, because I can point to other countries, but pretty much at the bottom of like all the things you could try and do. We're doing a lot of very counterproductive things, and that shows up in the data. We're one of the last countries really struggling with hospital overwhelm. India isn't struggling with that. Pakistan isn't struggling with that. Peru isn't struggling with that. Why us?
Yeah. So why are we?
Because we're doing all sorts of things wrong. The lockdowns are counterproductive, for starters. Second of all, we don't have any good prophylaxis. We're not there. Here's current state of care. NIH, go to their website, and their current state of care says if somebody comes to a doctor and they express symptoms, the doctor says go home. If they get worse, come back. That's it. They don't even say eat chicken soup. There's like literally no guidance. Lots of other countries have figured out there are many effective things you can do, and many of those things, if I even talk about them, the pharma goons are gonna ding your channel, and so I don't even talk about them anymore. That's the country I live in. So we have no prophylaxis, and we're telling people to go home where it spreads the best, and then we have all these really weird exclusions for essential, which again can spread it. So in Australia right now, it just came out this morning that if you live like in New South Wales or something like that, like it's beautiful, it's open, you could go to the beach, it's summer. No, you got to stay home locked down. But if you work for an airline, there's no quarantine, no automatic quarantine for pilots or stewardesses coming in. No quarantine for them, but for you as a citizen, there is, and it's just backwards, because obviously you might think that people who are flying in a closed tube coming from hotspots might be more of a vector than somebody who's just hanging out, living their life in a place with very, very low levels of transmission right now. So it's just examples like that. There's hundreds of them.
Is this the flu? And if not, why?
Well, it's a little bit of both. Listen, it's a pretty bad disease. If it's untreated or you don't have effective treatments for it, it's a very bad thing, right? So what's different about it is that it came however it arose, and there's a lot of controversy about where it came from and how. It came out of the gate perfectly tuned for the human body. And it doesn't just come in through the ACE2 receptor, which would be bad enough, right? That means it gets into the lungs, the nasopharyngeal area. It's got access through the gut, the testes. It's got a ton of ways. It's like a burglar who's got a perfect key to get into your house. But this burglar also can tunnel in, because it can go in through, now we know, at least 5, but possibly 6 receptors. So that makes it a little different. It's harder to fight because it comes in and can do all kinds of things. So one of the keys gets it into a receptor called neuropilin-1. That's heavily expressed in neuronal tissue. It explains what they call anosmia, but that's a loss of sense of smell and taste, which is really actually pretty, people describe that as one of the worst outcomes of this for them, because they lose weight because they don't even like food anymore. It's lost all sense of smell. And taste. So this thing is not like the flu, because it can come in through so many different gates. And when it comes in, it also really ravages the body, again, if it's untreated. Now, we're not in the bad old days of February and March where they just crammed people on ventilators and hoped for the best. We have really effective treatments now. And so that's the good news. The great news, which I'm really happy about, is I think this has taught me and there's a lot of other people about viruses. Flu is almost crushed in this flu season. It's just because people are taking some of these other minimal precautions. You remember the bad old days? You'd be on that plane to Vegas, right? And there would be that person who would come in and they're just dripping and sneezing and just like not even.
Yeah, hacking cough. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just know they're just spreading the whole thing around. I just hated those flights because I'm trained and I'm like, geez, I don't want to get sick, So we've learned a lot, and we've learned how to control viruses, and we've learned, how to have good prophylaxis against this. And this is the part I can't say without getting either of us in trouble. There are cheap, pretty much over the counter in most countries, remedies that are fairly effective by all the data. We have randomized clinical trials, we have observational studies, we've got all this data pouring in from around the world. But I will tell you that India right now, they have a death count on a per million basis that's 1/9 the United States. They have 100 people per million in India, with all of its slums, its complete inability to socially distance, people who don't have the option to just stay home and not work. Like, none of that's going on. and their death rate is 1/9 the United States on an adjusted per million basis. So how is that? Well, they're busy distributing these little blister packs with 4 different things in there, which I've talked about extensively on my show. Vitamin D is one. I think we can still say that safely. Zinc is another. Can say that. So they just went through the data and said, oh, here are things that actually work, and they distribute these things, and they cost about $1.50 for a protocol. Then they're just handing them out. So they've actually really done a great job. And if we did the same thing, we could get right back to work probably in a couple of weeks, no question. Well, if India can do it, I'm pretty sure we could do it. We're just not.